Good morning guys and welcome again. In this video I'm going to show you how I transformed an old boiler and some metal pipes into a stylish and unique fire pit. I used some 4x4 cm metal pipes and a few pieces of rebar to add a little extra flair. I also cut some letters into the boiler for an added touch of personality. Follow along as I guide you through the steps to create your very own metal fire pit. Let's get started with the heavy metal project. One of the first steps in this project is to clean the boiler using acetone. Acetone is a powerful solvent that is effective at removing lacquer and other coatings from metal surfaces. However, it's important to handle it with care. Make sure you wear gloves and work in a well-ventilated area to avoid any potential health risks. Personally, I like to use a respirator for such work. Next, I'm using an angle grinder with a steel brush attachment to scrub away any remaining lacquer and to give the surface a good look. This is important to get a nice clean surface for welding, and the varnish should also be removed completely, because when you use the fire pit for the first time, the remaining paint could burn due to the heat, and this stinks terrible. My boiler had some kind of an extra metal plate in the middle, which probably acted as a sort of a mounting. For my purposes as a fire pit, this plate was useless, so I just dismantled it. Now it's time to add a little extra flair with some custom lettering. I printed out the letters P-E-L-T, which have a special meaning, and then I glued them onto the side of the boiler. Afterwards, I used a drill to make holes at the endpoints of the letters, to make the cutting process a bit easier. Now we have to be creative to cut out these letters. Let's see what kind of cutting tools we have at our disposal. First up, we have the angle grinder. That's not really working out. The angle grinder is just too big. But how about the dremel? Okay, it would have taken ages to finish. So, nope, still not quite right. I think it's time to bring out the big guns. The jigsaw.
This is what happens when you give little men big guns. Good luck, boys!
Much better. With the jigsaw, I was able to cut out those letters in no time. Fun fact, I just used a normal wood blade for the whole boiler. The 2 mm thick metal of the bowl was no problem for the blade. Alright, now that we've added some personality to our metal fire pit, it's time to move on to the next step. Removal of the burr after the cutting process. For this I first used the angle grinder again with a sanding disc and then with a flap disc. Whoops! And I burned my fingers. Note to myself, always wear gloves when using an angle grinder. But no worries, a little burn never stopped me before. For the legs I used square metal pipes. I marked several triangles on the pipes which I removed afterwards. This will allow me to bend the pipes into a rounded shape, giving them a more natural and elegant look. Of course, I used my angle grinder for this again. By the way, I made a review video about the angle grinder. I will link it to you here above. This thing is really awesome. Anyway, for cutting I used gloves that were made of cotton on the back, which unfortunately got holes very quickly from the flying sparks. You should definitely use heat resistant gloves or leather gloves. Heat and cotton workwear don't seem to get well together in general, because suddenly I smelled burnt clothes and it got very hot in my stomach area. That was a close one, but thanks to my lightning fast ninja reflexes I was able to put out the fire quickly enough. For the other pipes I tried to direct the sparks in a different direction in a controlled way. However, I have to get other protective clothing for such work. And yep, the triangles were too big on the first pipe. To be precise, they were twice as big. Anyway, here we have the right size. And after I had cut out the triangles, I could also bend the tube the way I imagined at the beginning. For the welding I used an arc welding machine. This welder is unfortunately the only one I have, and for this work it is not very well suited because the pipes had a thickness of 2 mm and an arc welding machine is designed for thicker sheets. 2 mm is quite doable, but as you can see you quickly burn holes through it. An inert gas welding equipment would be better suited for sheets less than 2 mm thickness. I also have to say I'm not a professional welder, so that is also a problem.
Oh!
After welding I had to cut the legs for the boiler. And at the beginning I didn't know exactly how to draw the one curve on the other curve. I have to admit I didn't come up with the idea myself, it was my wife, and at this point thank you my treasure. I started by positioning one leg exactly with tape, a wedge and an angle. Once I was satisfied I took a block of wood with a waterproof pencil and drew the curve with it. After cutting one leg I transferred the measurement to the remaining two legs, which I cut as well afterwards. Then I grinded the legs a bit more to remove excess metal and slag from the welding process. In total I had 3 legs, which I placed in a radius of 120 degrees. To weld the legs on I used magnetic angles to hold the legs in place. The result was really impressive and it was really better than expected. However, I still wanted to add something to achieve even more uniqueness. That's why I thought a small fence made out of rebar steel on top would look really good. So I tried to bend a piece of rebar to the same scale as the boiler. In addition, I cut some pieces in the length of 8 cm, which are welded between 2 ladders on the inside of the boiler. Then I removed the welding slag with the angle grinder and a steel brush attachment. Finally, it was time for the last step. For this I simply welded the ring that I had bent before onto the small pieces of rebar. After that, I only had to sand the rough edges and corners a little, and I was done. Oh, what I forgot! I drilled a few holes in the middle of the fire pit so that water can drain off. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.